There's no seats.
Being number one bus, I don't get a lot of room to get this thing out of here.
Good job.
So, we'll start immediately looking up to your right. That would be the west coast of Vancouver Island. And you can see some houses way up the other side there. That's the newest and the largest growth in the city of Victoria out there. We call that the western communities of Victoria. There's 6 municipalities out that way. And that's the only place in Greater Victoria that has a little bit of residential land available for building. Otherwise, it's completely saturated. And where we're headed is out to a peninsula where Butchart Gardens is, and that is in an agricultural land reserve or residentially saturated. So those western communities, very young and very fast-growing. Where we are right now is called Ogden Point, and historically, so extreme fire hazard. Looking off to your right, oops, oh, what's going on here? Looking off to your right, through the trees, you'll start getting glimpses of the inside passage of Vancouver Island. And you can see some islands out there. Those are the San Juan, those islands. Over 100 years ago, with a couple by the name of Robert and Jenny Butchart. And they're already very successful business people in a place called Owen Sound, Ontario, Canada. They got that way from producing concrete. There's a good look at some of the table vegetable farms that span the east side of the peninsula for about 10 miles. You get a better look shortly when we start going down the hill. They, as I said, got wealthy on the East Coast, and they vacationed here in the West and decided this is where they'd like to retire. So they sold out back east, moved out here, and they weren't quite finished with their working career, however. Manufacturing facility. And they had to look for a location that had a bit of limestone and granite to produce concrete. And that would be a little bay on a much larger inlet or estuary that comes off the inside passage on the inside of this peninsula on the west side. This is the east side on our right. We're headed over to the west side right now. So they started this quarry, rather small one, and the quality of concrete that they were manufacturing was extremely high. So their product was in high demand. So the quarry was depleted rapidly, and what was left was this big, ugly hole in the ground, dirty, producing concrete on it. So she thought of how she could return some beauty to the landscape. And really quite amazing that she chose to turn it into a garden, as her education was in chemistry. She had a vision, she had a dream, but she didn't have any topsoil. It was a granite quarry. So she tasked her husband, Robert, to go around the surrounding farms out here. You gotta remember, back in those days, not a lot of people out here, just some big farms. So he rounded up literally thousands of cartloads of topsoil and had them delivered to the quarry. The locals described it as a continuous wagon train for about 4 years before her needs were met. Round about that time, it was starting to take shape as a garden. She opened the doors to the people of Victoria. She never really did have any intent whatsoever of it becoming an attraction. She just wanted to show folks that she was restoring some beauty to the land. So the word got out of this beautiful garden out here. More and more Victorians started coming out. Last count, before they eventually retired, was about 50,000 people were coming out to hang out in their garden. Kind of getting out of hand as far as retirement went. So they had to come up with some form of retirement strategy, so they offered it to their children. Of course, they didn't show any interest in it whatsoever. Anything like me, I hated gardening when I was a kid. Offered it to the people of Victoria just for $1. Just take it over and maintain it. Stupidly, Victoria turned them down and said that it was just too expensive for them to maintain. So they wrote it in their will to their very young grandson at the time. Poor kid, he didn't have a choice in the matter. He had to wait right up until the Second World War before he became of age to assume responsibility for it. His name was Mr. Ian Ross. Went away to fight in the Second World War, came back a decorated Royal Canadian Air Force fighter pilot, and he really did realize what he had. And it was pretty much all Mr. Ross's work that turned it into the attraction that it is today. So everything you see, with the exception of the sunken gardens, was the work of Mr. Ross. Jenny was the one who created the sunken gardens. That was the original quarry. Unfortunately, Mr. Ross died in the 1990s, and he in turn left it to his daughter. Ms. Lee is her name. And so it's still Robin Lee is her name. Robin Lee Clark. Had a bit of a brain lapse there for a minute. Forgot her name. Robin Lee Clark. So it's still in the family, and it is a Canadian National Historic Site. Definitely Victoria's largest tourist attraction. Attracts over 1 million visitors a season. 5 gardens within the gardens themselves. There's the sunken gardens, I've covered that. Then there's the rose gardens, absolutely spectacular. I don't want to even quote how many 100 different varieties of roses are in those gardens. They're located right beside Robert and Jenny's original home. Today that home's used for fine dining and banquet facility. Then there's the Japanese gardens, and everything that had to be done by Mr. Ross had to be authentic. So here we are, folks. This is Butchart Gardens on the right here. I'll slow down, get your camera out, and take a shot, and we'll go back to the ship. No? All right, keep driving. Okay. So, he sent to Yokohama, Japan for a master Japanese gardener, and he came and stayed at the estate until these gardens came to fruition. Victoria really benefited by that, as some of the big beautiful mansions in Victoria have some gorgeous Japanese gardens in them. Then there's the Mediterranean gardens and the Italian gardens. In my opinion, the whole gardens has a bit of an Italian flair to it. So Robert and Jenny, one of their favorite vacation spots also was Italy. You'll see some statuary that they may have brought back from Italy. This road is the original access road into the estate. And it also is a Canadian National Historic Site, and that it's made out of concrete from the original quarry, and that was done 1920 to 1922. When you consider how many people come every year, it's really quite amazing. It is a bit bumpy, but it's never had any major repair work done. Just made a little wider to accommodate these big buses that come and go. This is the original cement, yeah. It is amazing. It blows my mind every time when you figure literally thousands of buses come and go through here every year. All private around us, yeah. Yeah. They own much of the land originally, and the family since their death has sold it off, and now this residential area is called Brentwood. Quite highly priced homes. Going down a pretty steep hill all the way down to sea level here, so if you're thinking, how did they get that concrete product out of here? Well, they didn't bring it out on this road. They would load it on barges in the inlet and tow it right around the peninsula back to Victoria, right across the inside passage to the mainland. And far away as San Francisco, don't quote me on that one, but I've heard stories that they shipped as far as San Francisco after the Great Fire. So in the gardens, you'll find a lot of amenities in the way there of dining. There's in Waterwheel Square on your map there, you'll see a coffee shop that has soups, sandwiches, baked goods, coffees. A really nice little spot. And then once into the gardens proper, there's a restaurant called the Blue Poppy for your convenience. There's in the coffee shop, they've got probably the best soft ice cream in town, and there's also a gelato stand in the gardens. Real old-world, authentic carousel, hand-crafted wooden horses on that, so I expect to see you all flying around on that. There's also a electric boat ride of the inlet. This sign coming up on the left side of the bus is what they like to call a living sign, as those flowers and plants in there are actually live.
Wow.
New Guinea impatiens, I think. So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to go through this little checkpoint here. I'm going to stop the bus, shut it down, and I alone, I'm going to walk back and get our tickets, and then we'll proceed to the unloading area, which is up to the left there. You can see the coaches up there. That's the bus-only parking lot. So when you time to leave, look for the signs that say coach bus parking. So while I'm gone, I don't want any fighting in the bus, or I'll turn it around and we'll go home. Heard that before?
Mm-hmm. The one is you can take us on the way back. Victoria, where the bus station is.
There's another building runs left to right. The right end of it is coffee shop I spoke of, and on the left side is information center. And on the left side, you'll find the Other Living sign there, and that marks the entrance into the gardens proper at that point. As you leave the bus, I will give you your ticket. Don't lose it. Show it at the turnstiles right here. We'll come down this walkway through the square, and you're on your own. So, I'm looking at 10:30 right now. I'm supposed, according to tour information, an hour and 3/4, but I'm going to stretch that. So let's be out of here at 12:30. 12:30, folks, and this bus number is C as in Charlie, 15, Charlie 15, C15, 12:30. Do not be late, because this bus will leave. My obligation is to the people on this bus and the cruise ship, so please do not leave. It's about a $100 cab ride. You don't want to miss your boat. So 12:30, and that should give me enough time to give you a brief look at downtown Victoria and make your trip as enjoyable as possible that way. Don't come early though, I want you to enjoy it. Don't be afraid. 12:30, if you're all here at 12:30, I'm a happy camper. Just give me a sec while I get a step stool out for you.
चलो ऐसे ही फोटो
आइए इधर फोटो
ऐसे ही
नीचे बहुत हो गए ये थोड़ा छोटा सा वीडियो लेना चाहिए वीडियो ले लो इधर से थोड़ा सा
बंद करो
ये little waterfall. You see it? Jetzt hast du es definitiv.
Nein, du siehst das ganz hell.
Ouais. Non, là, je me dis.
확대해서 나온다고.
이게 전체가? 이거 잘 좀.
원사육처럼
all spring flowers, so it's just so different.
Nobody sort of framed it in.
아까 사진 찍는 이걸 갖고 하지 말라는 건가? 셀카봉 하지 말라고?
It's okay. Be quiet, Will.
Okay, I'm gonna run in. Your truck.
Okay, you can do this already.
As you saw, it's in a sunken area surrounded by rock. This little cottage on our left here, originally built by Robert and Jenny as their first home when it was producing concrete. And the manufacturing facility was down to the right at this stop sign here. And down there was a self-contained little village, if you will, where all the workers lived. And they had gardens for their vegetables and so forth. And this was really remote in those days, not served by the road. And it wasn't until 22 that they put the road in. So prior to that, the whole place was served by cargo ships that came in. There was a dock down there, and they unloaded the supplies and whatnot from them. Most of the workers at that time were either South Asian or East Asian, to work the big blast furnace to reduce the granites and limestone. I'd like to apologize for the noisy AC system in this bus. Definitely put it on my report when I get back. Take a little while and it'll cool down. It doesn't do much while it's sitting there like that. So the gardens are open 12 months of the year, 365 days, never closes. Sometimes it'll close down because this hill we're going up now may freeze over, or a little bit of snow, and they'll have to close until the road is cleared, but that's only a couple hours. About 500 employees overall, and there's 25 master gardeners in charge of shifts of workers that make all what you saw possible. Latter part of October, they'll start getting ready for Christmas. Big production there. Takes at least a month and a half to get ready. They decorate all the big trees with lights and hang huge ornaments in the big firs and cedars. And where Water Wheel Square is, they transform that into outdoor ice skating surface. So as I told you, the average temperature at that time of year not normally conducive to outdoor skating. So they have to bring in refrigeration equipment to accomplish that. Quite an undertaking. Serve hot chocolate on the ice, rent skates. The whole gardens are decorated to the theme of that Christmas carol of the 12 Days of Christmas. So whichever portion of the gardens you are in resembles one of those days from that Christmas carol. Usually a nativity play going on the stage. Several groups of carolers throughout the gardens. Makes a pretty special time out here for us. Great time to visit too. Might have noticed the vineyard on our right there. You saw it when we came in. It's a new industry, especially on the peninsula here. We've got about 8 vineyards now on the peninsula, and probably over 30 vineyards on South Vancouver Island. They've been able to find the magic formula between soil conditions and weather to start manufacturing some very good wines. That one we just passed there called Church and State. They do grow a certain amount of their grapes right there, but most of their grape comes from the interior of British Columbia, a place called the Okanagan Valley that has an incredible amount of wineries. Canada's only certified desert is in the southeastern portion of the province of British Columbia. You wouldn't associate that with Canada at all, but we do have a certified desert with rattlesnakes and cactuses. Overall on the peninsula here, there's 3 municipalities on this peninsula: Saanich, Central, and North Saanich. Many, many years ago, they came together, and in an effort to keep it as rural as possible, they offered to the residents that had a little bit of land if they could raise a small profit off them, a set profit, relatively small. They would reinstate them from residential status to farm status. And in doing that, they would reduce their tax base significantly. I never really realized how much of a tax break that was for people that qualified, but it's very significant. As it turns out, a parcel of land of about 15 acres, probably a tax bill of about $7,000, annually reduced to about $700. So it's a huge incentive for people out here on the peninsula. And it doesn't have to be agricultural, it can be pretty much any home-based business. So that brings in what I was talking about, vineyards and all sorts of cottage industries are springing up now. A lot of artisans at home, and back in the day, it was mainly agricultural. You ride along out through this way and stop at all the roadside stands at the end of these folks' driveways and get all your needs, but now not so much. I'm sure it's the same in your neighborhoods, that these locally raised products are becoming very popular. So a lot of these folks have contracts with the restaurants and groceries, so you rarely see it. There is one cooperative that you can go to, and you can purchase locally raised produce here. A couple of them actually, and they're booming right now. This area we're in right now, pretty historic. This was called the Saanich Fruit Growers Cooperative right here. It goes back in time. There was just a single building out here. It was a coal storage facility run by a rail line that came out of Victoria through here and terminated out at the steamship terminal. But I was telling you how we used to raise produce on the peninsula, ship to the mainland. Well, they would hold it in storage here until the boxcars were loaded, and away it went, but that didn't last too long. Then it's struggled looking after the farm community out here as a passenger cargo line, eventually shut down. And now that line become a very popular bicycle ride-away. Cycling, very popular here in Victoria. They call us the cycling capital of Canada. Greatest number of cyclists per capita out of any city in Canada. Another railroad on the west side of Victoria called the Galloping Goose Trail. Rather strange name, but that was the name of the very last locomotive that ran on that line. And its original use was to bring gold ore in from a small gold strike right here on South Vancouver Island. It was very small, but again, struggled to look after the farm community. And the final vehicle was a kind of a hybrid arrangement of a steam locomotive with a fixed boxcar on it for passenger use, and that was the Galloping Goose. That line, about 40 miles long, and it's over on the west side of Victoria, going out into the Souk foothills, really become popular for vacationers, as a lot of the homeowners along that line have turned their homes into bed and breakfast. They can enjoy the whole entirety of that trail, one end to the other, skipping from one B&B to the next. So I was alluding a bit to the Canada-U.S. border, made a wisecrack about seeing the red dotted line out there. Again, looking out to the left as we go along here through the trees ahead, you'll get glimpses of the inside passage and some islands out there. And if you look now, I can see the islands out in the passage out there. Those are actually the San Juan Islands that belong to the United States state of Washington. And I was telling you how both the Commonwealth and the United States was populating this area. It wasn't until a dispute arose on that very island off to our left out there, which is San Juan Island, where U.S. pioneers, along with colonial pioneers, were living as neighbors with no declared country at that time. They were in a place called the Western Territories of North America. And It wasn't until one farmer, this is a true story, you can check it out, one farmer's pigs escaped and got into another farmer's crops and destroyed them. And the farmer who lost the crops, he shot the pigs. And the farmer that lost the pigs, he wanted the other farmer to pay restitution. And then the other farmer pretty much just told him to stick it in the air. And it just escalated from that point right on up. And of course, back in those days, there was no government per se. Probably a low-ranking military officer of some description. So they didn't get any satisfaction. And it went right on up the chain of command until finally the United States sent 4 armed warships up here, and the colonials amassed 1,200 armed Marines, and they were set to go to battle over this issue. And fortunately, somebody with a cool head stood up and said, hey, wait a minute, you know, how can we decide on this issue if there is no land claim in this area? So it was at that time that it drew the attention to the problem of all these people living in the West here with no declared country. And that's when they continued with the border. So the border just stopped on the 49th parallel, short of the Rockies. They never did think the West was going to be populated as fast as it was. Well, as I was telling you about the various gold finds, and both countries had railways roaring west here, they thought they'd better get busy when this dispute arose. Well, some of you youngsters on the bus might remember the slogan 5440 or fight. That arose from those negotiations as the U.S. wanted that border up on the 54th parallel, some 600 miles north of where we are right now. Of course, that didn't fly with the colonialists, so they were able to agree on continuing with the 49th out to the west coast here. Once they got out to the west coast, now what are we going to do with the island, this big old island out in the ocean out here? We're going to run the border across it on the 49th parallel and split it into 2 countries, or are we going to detour the border around the island and then include it into one of the other countries? So to include it into the United States would have meant a detour of some 240 miles up the Inside Passage and over the top to put it into the United States. So they chose the southern one, which made more sense, was to run it down parallel with us on the Inside Passage, right off the waterfront of Victoria, basically where your cruise ship, and at that point due west to our right out to the open Pacific. And that was signed in 1858. And that was when British Columbia was established, and this island was declared part of the Commonwealth. So yeah, if you ever get a chance to look at a map of how the border runs in this area, it's really quite interesting. They went to a lot of trouble to appease both nations. The only other anomaly be where the 49th parallel comes out on the west coast here, comes out into the ocean for just a little tiny bit. It goes across a bay, and there's a peninsula on that bay that it goes across. So there's actually a border crossing on this tiny little peninsula just to our south here. And they did that to keep the First Nations people in Washington State, to give them fishing treaty rights to the Fraser River sockeye run. So there you go. Could well be in the United States right now, because we are 60 miles south of the 49th parallel, well into the state of Washington. We're surrounded by Washington State on the left, which is the mainland, and straight in front of us, which is the Olympic Peninsula, Washington State. Hopefully you'll get a better look at the Olympic Mountains shortly as we crawl up this hill in front of us here. A good elevated view of South Vancouver Island. So folks, I know your ship leaves significantly later. I understand there's a few of you on board that would like to be dropped off downtown. There is only one zone we're allowed to do that in, and if I'm able to pull over there, I will let those people off that would like to stay downtown. There are taxis and a shuttle system available for you to ride back to the ship. The shuttle is probably about a 4 or 5 blocks, slightly uphill from where I drop you off. So if you're not into walking that distance, you might think about grabbing a cab. It's like a 5 or 6 minute ride to the ship from that point. You can actually see your ship right on the horizon there. You can see a bit of a glisten there, and the chimney or the funnel, that's the ship. I was wrong about the mountains. They're still covered in clouds, so that pretty much goes with what I was telling you about how those mountains grab all the weather and keep it over there. We do have a university here in Victoria, called the University of Victoria, of course. It originally established in 1922, and it's moved to its current site in 1963. About 17,000 students attend UVic, very popular university, ranked number 3 over all the universities in Canada. Top subjects are law, environment, languages, and astronomy. Astronomy, they have an observatory there, and it's hooked up with a federal observatory out here on the peninsula. A very old institution in Victoria here, the observatory is, where they manufacture large telescopic mirrors for some of the big telescopes around the world, such as the big telescope in Mount Haleakala in Hawaii was manufactured right here. Also did a lot of work in the Hubble program with NASA. Some of the large employers here, I was telling you a bit about us being the capital city and having the provincial government employees here. That's one of them, but always, most of my life here, tourism has been the number one employer. Up until the last 2 years, there's been a shift, and that has been into the high-tech sector. A lot of the big information search engines, such as Yahoo and Google, are setting up here, and manufacturing web design and games design, so forth, setting up here. And manufacturing small to medium-sized aircraft right here on the peninsula, a company by the name of Viking Air. And they make aircraft capable of short takeoff and landing. One of the high-tech manufacturers, solar energy here is a very big industry, as is green technology also. So, having said that, I could never really explain to my guests what the high-tech industry consisted of. I basically put it down as what we call the clean, silent employer here in Victoria. You really never see the workers or even know it's going on. So to bring light to the subject, some smart young fellow came up with a brilliant idea not too long ago, as he gave out small orange lamps to every company just in the downtown sector, downtown Victoria, that are involved in the high-tech industry. And he gave out over 400 lamps. And when you walk around downtown Victoria at night through the business district, you can see all these little lamps glowing in the windows of all these offices that you would normally never know what they were involved in.
Excuse me, sir. On the way downtown, will you be passing the Fairmont Hotel and the castle, or?
Just dropping in front of the Fairmont Hotel.
Thank you.
This is not a tour to the castle, sir.
Oh, I got on the wrong bus.
Yep. We're in. All this traffic is related to the ferry system. So as I was saying, every hour 500 vehicles are dumped onto this highway into Victoria, and vice versa, going in the other direction over the mainland. So this is a busy connector. Just went by a large facility on the right there called Uptown. And that was a huge construction project that went on for about 4 years here. And the idea behind that was to move some of the businesses away from the downtown core to the outskirts of Victoria. Well, that one in particular has residential component to it. It's a huge, huge city block. And there's condominiums in there for residential purposes. It goes from big box shopping, Walmart, all the way down to boutique shopping with its own Main Street, park, theaters, restaurants. And it's located right on a very busy transit exchange there, so you can get anywhere in Victoria fairly rapidly without owning a vehicle. And it's proved to be extremely popular. So they're thinking on more communities such as that. The furs from the trappers, and they went on to become general merchandise providers. And then when pioneering started by the Commonwealth, bringing pioneers from Great Britain and the Commonwealth to Canada, the Hudson Bay stepped up to the plate and said, if you come to work in the Hudson Bay business for 1 year, and then you were free to go and make your own life. And they would pay for your passage here and make sure that you were situated. So So as I was saying about employment here, we're very lucky for a standalone community out here in the middle of the ocean. We're doing very well as far as employment goes. Our unemployment here is 3%. And the other major employers, of course, are the Canadian Navy has the West Coast Fleet based out of Victoria. And over 30% of Victoria's population is retired. So that has huge spin-offs in relation to employment in residential home care and the healthcare industry. This old facility on the right here is called the Bay Street Army unit called the Princess Patricia Light Infantry Regiment, a very old Army unit going back to Queen Victoria's reign, our current Queen's mother. And that unit was one of the first units going into the war and terror in Afghanistan back in the 90s. And to fulfill their obligation, they had to recruit from ranks right across the country. And thankfully, when they returned a few years ago, there's just too many of them, and they've gone on to a bigger base in Alberta now. That recruiting and reserve. Over on the left here, this is a relatively new sportsplex, again, sponsored by a local food chain, Save On Foods. And that's a multi-use facility home to the Victoria Royals, a professional hockey team. And they play in a West Coast hockey league against cities like Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, BC, interior British Columbia teams, all the way down to Spokane, Washington. And they have concerts and so forth in there. On our right, this will be the third tower of condominiums built under the name of the Hudson. Again, the Hudson Bay Trading Company. The original department store is the first set of condominiums built under that name. This is the original department store built in 1922. Closed down as a store about 5 years ago, and they redid it into a condominium complex. So successful, but they built that second tower, and the third tower is under construction on our right. So that building coming up on the right there, that is the original Hudson Bay department store. And a big part of our life, us old-timers here in Victoria. I grew up using that store. Used to skip out from school and get on the roof up there and drop water balloons on the pedestrians down here. I guess that's why I'm still driving a bus, right? Beautiful public market on the ground floor. Looking ahead of us across the intersection is a Masonic lodge, and it's the oldest one in Western Canada. Sacrifices, hundreds of lives were lost in building the railway through the Rockies. And for that sacrifice, when they returned home here to Victoria to visit their families, only to find they were really treated poorly, segregated, forced to become totally self-sufficient in all their needs, including schooling for their children. Their children weren't allowed to attend the Caucasian schools, so they had to build a school for their children. And it's coming up here on the right-hand side of the bus. Open every day during the school year, still in use 135 years later, and Caucasian children more than welcome to attend. Beautiful old building. Many Canadian parents now are realizing the importance of immersing their children in Mandarin for business reasons. Station and jailhouse, now a municipal office. Straight ahead of us, you can see what is called the Gates of Harmonious Interest. And they were built in 1988 to bring some closure to some hard feelings that existed, how their relatives were treated. I grew up here, never felt any resentment from any Asian friends I had, but apparently there was. 2 stone lions on either side there, a gift from our sister city in China by the name of Suzhou, and the Chinese say that should an honest politician walk through these gates, the lions will come to life. I've been waiting a really long time and nothing's happened. In fact, that one's got a banana in its mouth. You might have seen a beautiful dragon fountain out at the gardens today. Yeah. That was a gift to us last year from our sister city by the name of Suzhou to celebrate 35 years. This Chinatown, big part of Victoria, the commercial area here, it went 3 blocks on either side of us. The residential portion went about 12 blocks behind us. called Fantan Alley. That's the narrowest street address in Canada down there. Bustling community, as you saw. But back in the day, that was where the opium dens and the gambling rooms were. They played a card game called Fantan. That's Fantan Alley. Looking straight ahead of us, you can see a newer brick building. That building was built out of some of the profits from a small boutique hotel and microbrewery around the corner here called Swans. And the owner of it, a well-loved Victoria resident by the name of David Williams, he had a real big heart for the homeless people in Victoria, and he was always giving money to their plight. He started this business late 1970s out of an old feed-in grain mercantile. Here on the left is the one with the flower pots on it. And he passed in the late 1990s, and he left that hotel to the University of Victoria to look after. And in his will, he stated that a small amount of the profits from that hotel go to the homeless here in Victoria. And so far they've built 2 homeless shelters. A great place to eat, a great place to sample some of our local, as I call them, wobbly pops, beer. Victoria has some excellent craft breweries here. On the right, that's the old Janyan Hotel, circa, I'm guessing at this, 1890. It sat dormant all my life here, and this last winter they brought it back to life, extended on the back of it right down to the water, and it's all condominiums now. I think there's a date. Yeah, 1891. Hey, how about that? Not losing it. On the left here, Market Square. Historic is what Victoria used to do all their shopping. Is a open courtyard surrounded by a couple of levels of storefronts. If you look careful on the green space here, you see some folks sitting on a park bench. Well, in amongst those folks sitting right there, you can see Mr. David Williams sitting there looking back at his hotel. How about that? He's there 24/7 if you want to go and say hi to him. Across the street on the right, 2 of probably the oldest buildings here in Victoria. Very nondescript right now. Is all this area is under reconfiguration to accommodate a new drawbridge that's going in any day now. Those 2 old buildings, the one on the right closest to us, behind the trees there, Victoria's first post office, and the small one to the left of it was the gold depository for those prospectors coming back from Barkerville. They would cash the gold in there, walk across the street, a block up where Yates Street is, to the first establishment that sold alcohol, a saloon operated by Mr. Robert Yates. Good idea, good way to name a street after him. The bridge spans inland waterway off of the inner harbor. It runs about a mile through Victoria, and that's where all the heavy industry used to be back in the day. Shipbuilding, lumber mills, soap works, brick factories, and so forth. All undergone a massive cleanup operation in the past 20 years, and now all high-density housing going in there. Looking off to the right in the distance there, you can see condominium development. That was Victoria's first effort about, I want to say 20 years ago, at building condominiums. There's about 3,000 units over there, pretty high-end properties. Very successful, and that really started the trend of building condominiums here. On the left side, you can see. I took a tour up to Barkerville, and it was my first time there. And my son-in-law is crazy about everything bacon. So I found an old school bacon press. You know, you put it on the grill and it quickly fries it looks like an iron actually, but it's a bacon press. You put it on the bacon and it cooks the bacon real fast. So I bought it for him. So I'm standing in line and there was a lady in front of me. She was buying something and she says to the lady that's dressed in period, she says to her, oh, could you put that in a plastic bag for me? I've got a bit of a walk ahead of me. And the lady looks at her and says, yeah, in about 100 years. Took like all the time to wrap it in brown paper and string. This is Bastion Square, and that is where they built their first courthouse, behind the tree up there. Kinda cool. It's beautiful. On the right, Victoria Inner Harbor. You can see the big mega yachts, such as the one beside us there. More and more vessels like that are starting to come in. So they're building a mega yacht marina. This pinkish building on the right here goes back in time to before Canada even had a navy. That was Her Majesty's Royal Naval Building. We've only had a navy for 107 years. There is Victoria Inner Harbor down to the right. Across the harbor you see the building with the columns on it. That is that Canadian Pacific steamship building I was telling you about. When that was finished, the steamers came around and moored in the harbor here. That coincided with the building of the Empress Hotel, which is coming into view right in front of us. The Empress got new owners last year. The Bosa construction family, a very, very wealthy local construction family, and they put $30 million into that hotel last winter to bring it back to its 5-star plus rating. So I'm going to pull up ahead here at the end of the block, folks, for anybody that wants to get off downtown. And I'll formally say goodbye to everybody at this point. And not that you have to leave the bus, but I'm not going to say goodbye twice. So thanks very much for taking the tour, and I hope I provided you with a little local history.
Are we going to get off here?
And if you did...
Thank you. Guys, I like it.
앉아서.
It was indeed a great pleasure to serve you and look after you for the past 7 days, and we sincerely hope that you have enjoyed the main dining room service and the food in the Sapphire dining room as much as we have enjoyed serving each one of you. It has truly been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, this wonderful staff standing behind me, your friendly waiters, assistant waiters, and head waiters, you must have seen them serve the many meals in the Sapphire. You must have seen them in the Windjammer, serving breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea, or dinner. You must have also seen them in the Cafe Promenade, serving pizzas, cookies, and snacks. Through the room service, serving the many meals that we serve across from there. Ladies and gentlemen, your assistant waiters and waiters and head waiters now have a question for you. By round of applause, shouting and screaming. No jumping on the tables, please. How much have you enjoyed the main dining room service in the Sapphire? In the Benjamin Cafe, and they also have a question for you. By round of applause again, shouting and screaming. Again, no jumping on the tables, huh? How much have you enjoyed this service in the Benjamin Cafe? Do you think they deserve a standing ovation? Again, this group. Thank you so very much. They really appreciate your kindness. Breakfast tomorrow in the dining room will open at 6:30 and in the Windjammer at 5:45. It was indeed a great privilege to serve you and look after you for the past 7 days. And we sincerely hope that we will meet each other on the beautiful Explorer or any of the Royal Caribbean ships in the not too distant future. We wish you happy landing tomorrow in Seattle and a safe journey home. And for all who sailed on the beautiful Explorer, may your good God go with you. Ladies and gentlemen, your dining personnel who come from 23 different nations has a parting gift for you. They will be singing for you tonight in English, in all their 23 different accents of their own fable song, Hands Across the Sea. Hey, look us over. feedback. When you depart the ship tomorrow, you will receive something called a guest satisfaction survey as a link in your email account. Please spend some minutes of your valuable time to put in your scores, your comments. We on the Explorer have something called a incentive program. The best waiter of the week, the best assistant waiter of the week. Big support. The best assistant waiter of the week, the employee of the month, the employee of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a question for you. Who decides that for them? Yes, none other than you, ladies and gentlemen. On basis of the scores that you put with regards to the dining room service, with regards to the dining room food, the Windjammer service and the Windjammer food, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. Ladies and gentlemen, you will decide who among them will be the waiter of the week, the assistant waiter of the week, the employee of the year and the employee of the month. Ladies and gentlemen, so if the satisfaction survey, not important to anybody, is very important for your waiters, assistant waiters and head waiters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for cruising with us. Thank you for coming to the beautiful Explorer. We love you all. We expect you back soon. Have a great evening. And wish you happy Explorer. Thank you so much.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I was like